Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the Quantum Connection podcast. My name is Heather Crimson, and I'm here with my co-host Vanessa. And today we have one of our quantum biology visionary leaders with us. So we're really excited to hear what she has to share with us in the world of everything quantum. Today we have Meredith Oke, and Meredith is the executive director of the Institute of Applied Quantum Biology, which provides health education grounded in cutting-edge research that would otherwise take decades to reach the public. She is also an executive coach and host of the Quantum Biology Collective podcast. So thank you so much for being here today, Meredith. We are very, very excited to hear everything that you've got going on.
Thank you, Heather, and thanks, Vanessa. I am so really happy to be here, and I love what you are doing in the world and bringing this podcast out, putting it out, and bringing on all the amazing guests. I'm scrolling through your guest list. I'm like, oh, I love this so much. So well done, you two.
Thank you.
Well, thanks. But you're a big inspiration, the Quantum Biology Collective one. I've been listening to that, I think since the beginning. And I'm just like, I look forward to it every week because I'm like, oh, somebody new. And you can always glean new information and learn so much. Like it's just such a wealth of so much in-depth knowledge on that podcast. It's beautiful. So you set the tone really beautifully. So thank you.
Oh, thanks, Vanessa. Yeah, and I find the same thing every single time I talk to somebody. I learn something that I didn't know, or I hear something in a way I hadn't heard, or it lands differently. It's just, it's such an infinite and robust field to discuss. So,
yeah. That's why it's so fun to do the podcast, right? You must like
yes, I love it.
I absolutely love doing the podcast.
Isn't it the most fun you've ever had? I'm like, everyone should have a podcast.
Well, first of all, you're talking about like your passion, your purpose, your interest, right? You're sharing your beliefs, your wants, all the things, right? Like, and you're bringing people on that, jive with you, right? So that's helpful, right? That's great. And you just, like you said, you get to connect with all these like amazing people. And I don't know, I just find everybody in the quantum realm to just be like the best, really.
Yeah.
So we love it.
No, it's very self-selecting for a naturally like curious, visionary type of person who's like willing to look at things for out of their own sort of motivation for learning and not to, get a job or something. Anyway, it's really
right. So seeking truth or seeking some information, some wisdom, which is how you, I'm thinking, landed in this field, is that you were also seeking. So give us a little snapshot overview, Meredith, about how you came into this position, like of doing all of these things, right, for the quantum biology community.
Yes, it was never ever something that I would have had on my bingo card, I have to say. I mean, my professional trajectory is totally nonlinear. I'm not like a, person who ticked boxes and went on the straight and narrow. That being said, starting, being involved in the Quantum Biology Collective was like way off piste even for me. But it started because I had a health challenge that I could not overcome, which for me was chronic fatigue. I didn't really even know that's what it was for many years. I just, I had young children, and it was, life's busy and this and that. And it just got worse and worse. And my, physicians were like, well, your labs are fine, so you're fine. And I wanted to have a third baby. And I went to an acupuncturist, and he was like, you are really out of balance in some fundamental way. Like, I don't exactly know what it is, but there's something going on. And I was like, okay. And then I went to my OB. I'm like, I'm thinking of getting pregnant. She's like, okay, let's like run all the labs and make sure everything's good. She ran all the labs. She's like, yeah, you're good. Go ahead, get pregnant. And I was like, I'm just going to not listen to the acupuncturist. I'm just going to keep doing what I want to do. And so I went and ahead and got pregnant. At the time I was living in a high rise, because we were living in Hong Kong.
Wow.
And so we were like on the south side of the island near the sea. So it wasn't like a concrete jungle, but we were still in a high rise. It's very hot and humid there, like 8 months a year. So you always have the windows closed. You always have the aircon on. I spent some time outside, but there were all of these little things that I didn't think about at the time that were slowly like eating away at my mitochondria, basically. We had terrible light bulbs, we had screens on. There were a lot of, I had, in hindsight, my seed oil consumption probably increased a lot. Just all these kinds of things. And it got to the point where after when my baby was firstborn, like I literally, like I would remember walking, I had to go to a doctor's appointment and remember like counting the steps on the sidewalk to be like, can I get down the street? Am I going to make it down the street? Like, okay. And like, to like each step I had to take a deep breath, and I'm like, this is just not normal, but nobody could give me an answer. So I did a big, long, deep dive into food and supplements with this woman who was wonderful. And she had me on a, what's it in your gut when you have
SIBO?
The bad stuff, eat it, or the
SIBO?
Yeah, maybe that's what it was. She found that. So we did lots of things, and it helped a little bit, but it would it didn't fix it. And we ended up moving to France, and I lived in a house on the ground, and it got better. But still, like I would still need to like lie down on the couch multiple times a day, and I would time it. I was like, I can do like a 4-minute nap, like just have my body reset.
Wow.
Anyway, I hit the point where I was like, I can't do this anymore. And I don't know what else to do. Like I've done all the things. I've gone to all the doctors. I've done all the food. I've done all the supplements, things like acupuncture, energy work. Like I was open to all of it. It all helped, but I could just tell there was some fundamental piece that I was missing. And as you said, Heather, like I'm a seeker, right? So I'm always listening to all the things. And off more in the personal development spiritual space than like the health space, but still there's an overlap. So I just sat down in my kitchen one day because I had ordered a spiralizer to turn zucchini into spaghetti.
I had one of those. It's I think we all have some.
Remember?
I have one of those. I still
Yeah.
have it.
And I was like, I really don't want to use this. And I know, and it's like, I know what's gonna happen. And they're like, your kids will just eat it just like spaghetti. And I'm like, they will not. They will not.
No, they do not.
No. And I just saw my life unfolding with like another like 60 years of micromanaging my food, which I don't like to do. I have like kind of an ADD, I don't like details. So to have to think about this all the time was like so painful into my head. And I was like, there's got to be something, like there has to be something else. Like if the food was going to solve this, it would have solved it. Like I've done enough that it would have worked.
Right.
And I just got really quiet. I'm like, okay, like, what is it? And I flashed to an interview. It was actually an interview on Gaia with Regina Meredith. She has a show that is not, she doesn't do a lot of health guests, but occasionally she does. And she had on good old Dr. Jack Cruz. And I flashed to an interview that I had watched the entire thing like a year before, where he had talked about how important light is. And at the time I thought, oh, that's interesting. And I went outside like an extra 5 minutes a day, and that was it. And then this moment, you're like up against the wall. You're like, I'm desperate. I'll do whatever. And I flashed back to that, and I was like, oh, that's the piece.
There it is, coming back around into your awareness.
There it is.
Well, we're glad it came back to you.
That's opened a new channel. Yeah.
Yeah, look at everything that's exploded since then, that one little moment, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So what were some of the
Exactly.
changes that you made, just for the audience?
So it was slow going, right? Like, and I like to bring that up because so once we get into it, we're like, why doesn't everyone do this? But I was reading about all of this stuff for months before I ordered blue blockers. I was reading about this stuff on my iPad at night. Like, and then once the penny dropped, I was like, oh my God. Because when you don't understand how important light frequencies are to your biology, right? Like you can have all of these ups and downs in your health that make no sense. And then once you get it, like I look back and I'm like, oh, I was feeling better. And then that app came out that has like a million books that you can read any one of them you want for $9 a month. And so I switched from hard copy books to my iPad because I'm a bit of a book junkie. And of course, everything got worse because when do I read? I read before bed, right? Like all of these little things. And it was really hard going, right? Like nobody was talking about this. Dr. Cruz does a lot of podcasts. He's very hard to understand. I would like sift through and try to find the ones where he talked to somebody who somehow managed to get some clarity. I was like reading everything and I just thought like, I really, really need to get this. Like, I just had this deep, deep knowing that I needed to understand this. And yet it was so hard. And I was like, I just wish I had like a health coach or a naturopath or somebody who I could go to who got it.
Who could give you the Cliff's Notes.
Yeah.
Right. Just tell me what
right?
to do, right? The practical
because
application.
once you know that light is so important, it's very hard to trust your health to somebody who doesn't know that.
Yes.
So even though light is not the only piece,
Mm-hmm.
there's many other pieces. If someone is missing that piece, it's really hard to have them be your mentor to get well, right? Like, so
Agreed.
my thought was, yeah, like I don't need every person who ever treats me for anything to understand light, but I need at least one. And I think everybody does.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Yeah.
I just want to notice that I had the similar beginnings with coming into this world of quantum biology. I had some I wasn't bedridden, but I felt like sometimes I should have been with chronic fatigue, and all my energy I conserved just to serve my clients,
Yeah.
And then I just did what I could for the rest. But it's so depressing. And I thought I had depression. Like I didn't know what it was, right? And I would do diet harder. And then that turned into long cooking bone broths, which then, brought out a raging histamine issue. It was like compounded. And then there's perimenopause. It was like just a total shit show. But anyway, I find it interesting. Like my entry into this was because I also read about the quilt thing like in 2010, 11, and then it was too much for my brain. Like, in chronic fatigue, it's like I couldn't even read a book, like a page. I would have to go back over and read over and over because I couldn't remember what I had just read. It was that hard. And so I actually signed up, Meredith, for a high ticket coaching offer through Clients on Demand. It was like some other people in there who are doing the same marketing training I was. I paid like a big chunk of money. So I was like so motivated. I did everything and they broke it all down like so simply. So I feel like I got lucky now just as hearing you. I'm like, oh, that was actually not the worst investment. Like that was what saved me. But they also were really good at explaining. It was Dylan and Molly. Like they could explain it all very easily and broke it down into do this and just like laid it all out for you. So thank goodness was my reentry into learning about it. And I didn't even know that they were gleaning the information from all of the volumes of the things Dr. Cruz talked about until they said something about like surgery without a scalpel, or I don't know what it was, something like that. And I looked it up and then it went back. I'm like, oh, it's the guy again with the quilt. Very interesting that I hear in your story.
Yes. Yes. And how important it is to have those people who are the bridge from all of the mountains of research that are out there, right? Because there's so much.
Yeah.
And then you have people who make these really important connections. And I think that was Dr. Cruz's main contribution, right? Like he made the connection between like Doug Wallace and mitochondria and Jim Al-Khalili and quantum biology and all of the circadian research that started to come out. And he wove those all together and was like, what if light, like the circadian story is actually like a subatomic story? And that was a huge, I think, insight that would have taken a lot longer had people just stayed in their silos, their academic and scientific silos. So that was a really, really important contribution. That being said, once that contribution has been made, it's like, okay, if nobody understands what you're talking about, from a even from an intellectual level, let alone to translate it into a practical application. And so for me as a coach, that's my thing, right? I'm like, if people can't, and probably same, with both of you as a teacher, as a therapist, right? Like if people can't learn it in a way that's meaningful enough for them to change their behavior, like it almost doesn't matter.
Yes, it doesn't because it's really good. And that's why like the podcast that you've created and the institute that you've created teaches it to practitioners and teaches it to people who, basically the podcast can just listen and just learn this information and just glean enough to actually start applying this to their lives and changing their lives and just being so much healthier. So it's like so beautiful.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So
because you just need it to make enough sense.
Yeah.
To be like, oh, okay, I will put those weird orange glasses on. I get it. Right?
Like just the essence of the distillation of the research implications, and then here's what you need to do. Because it's really interesting how basic and simple what you need to do is.
Yes.
From all the volumes of research studies, it's like, well, this is what you need. There's almost like a disconnect for people. They're like, what?
It almost seems
Yeah.
too easy. It almost seems too easy, too simple. They're always looking for the big device, the big magic pill, the big thing. It's got to be more expensive. It has to be harder because my health challenges are so challenging. It has to be more challenging. Like this can't be that easy.
Yeah.
That's what I see a lot. So, but I mean,
yes.
and
The science is so complex. The practical application of it is so simple.
So
to the point that people are like, yeah, whatever. Like I'll say circadian rhythms. They're like, yeah, I guess, whatever. Like,
or
no, you don't understand.
And honestly, I can't even tell you how many practitioners I saw before I started like implementing quantum. And I really started learning it from information from other people. Like before I saw a practitioner who actually did do that. Like I've kind of figured it out a lot on my own. But it was like nobody mentioned it to me. They gave me tryptophan. They gave me melatonin. They gave, what I mean? Nobody ever said, well, what kind of lights are you under? Or how much time do you spend outside? Or how much time do you sit in front of your computer? And how long do you spend looking at your phone? Not one person said that to me. And here I was with chronic insomnia and not able to sleep every night. Nobody said that to me. Nobody. And tons of practitioners I saw. So yeah, it's really interesting. But we're changing that. That's the good part about that. We're changing that.
Yes.
We're getting all of our information out there and sharing that so that doesn't happen to somebody else.
Yeah. No, the goal with the certification was that everybody who wants can have access to a practitioner who understands life.
Oh, I love that. I love that.
It's beautiful.
How did that come about, Meredith? Like, I want to know the moment where you were like, I'm going to do this thing. Tell me about that.
It was gradual. So my husband and I started working on this. We were originally going to make a documentary, but it just, in order to do justice to the topic, it was a little unwieldy as one long chunk, right? Like we had this board with all of these Post-its of like all the different, right? Like we're like, oh yeah, I don't know how this is gonna go. So in the meantime, I was interviewing lots and lots of people. We had that content up behind a paywall, because it was during the pandemic. It was a weird time. It was like, you said the word natural health, like YouTube would kick you off. Like it was all, and I feel protective of this material and this field, because I know that it's nascent, and right, like you're not gonna like take a newborn baby to like a nightclub, right? Like I feel like I want to protect this and only have people who understand how to be with it. So we were behind a paywall for a little while, and we were experimenting, offering a few different kinds of programs, and the feedback we kept getting was like more science, more science, more science. And I realized like that my need, as the sort of end user, so to speak, was that I wanted to be able to find a practitioner who could do this. And the bridge that was not there between all of the science and all of the people who needed help was a practitioner training. So I'm somebody who spent a lot of years thinking about the nature of reality, like
I love it.
and how it's mostly made up.
Yep.
So I just thought, well, you know what? we're so trained to think that we need to be credentialed through something that already exists. But nothing that exists is going to understand how to credential this for a really long time. So let's learn how to do that ourselves. And then like you both came and participated, and now you are strengthening that, and so on and so on. So we're building it ourselves.
Wow. So
by
you basically
connecting.
manifested the reality of, right, the validating it and giving it legitimacy, and the bridge between all of these great, brilliant researchers, the people who've synthesized that, to the bridge to then bringing it into awareness of, hopefully many, many people in society, and the bridge of the practitioners who are going to then serve these
Yes.
people. Yeah. Okay.
Yes. And because I'd interviewed so many people, I had found, at the time, not very many, but I did find people who knew enough, who had both the, intellectual understanding and clinical experience working with this. So that was like Heather Shepard and Carrie Bennett and Leland Stillman. And there are many, if we started now, I could have a way bigger faculty, but at the time it was, that was the other piece of it, right? Is that because I'd been doing all those interviews and finding all those people, and literally like on the internet, someone would say sunlight, I'd be like, I DM them, I'd be like, what do you know?
Wow. So you did a lot of research.
So yeah, like that's how I found Carrie, that's how I found Leland, like all of it.
And Nathan.
And Nathan, yes, absolutely. Same thing, right? Like you just hear
and
hear
Montgomery.
people talking.
Montgomery too, right?
And Jay Montgomery.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You brought together a lot of amazing people. Like they really are and they're just beautiful people who just share so much great wisdom and knowledge. What came first? Did you do the Institute first, or did you do the podcast first? The Institute was probably first, right?
Yeah. So we did the certification first, and then I started the podcast because I realized there still needed to be another bridge.
Yeah. Another way to spread the information.
You can't, like social media is not really enough to tell this story.
No.
I mean, it's a great starting point, but you can't quite go there. And then, so I realized too, like people needed a space where they could kind of immerse themselves. And so I love that you're doing it as well, right? Like we need to like grow the space where people can come in and marinate, and then be like, oh, okay, I get it. And then they may choose to hire a practitioner or get trained or do whatever. But because it really is such a paradigm shift, right? Like we're asking people to believe things that they've never thought about, and to stop believing things that have always been true to them. Like it's not a small ask. So I think the more podcasts, the more spaces we can create where people can start to feel comfortable making that shift, it makes a huge difference.
It's almost like going forward, but also going backwards though, too, because it's really like going back to the way things were before we invented all of these other things that are interfering with our biology, right? So there's, if I sing it to the people that way, sometimes they can understand that aspect. I'm like, it's really just going backwards a little bit, but
right. Yeah.
No,
it's, it's only the last 20 years that the sun has been toxic, right? Like,
oh, that's so interesting. What changed? Right?
How did we survive before then? Right. And like, I lived in Asia, like you go to Indonesia or places that are really hot, like nobody pays for sunscreen. Like that's not something you spend your money on. My husband was doing some research where he was like interviewing families who lived in, I think it was in Indonesia, right? And like they had like dirt floors, and like they drove rickshaws, and they're like, we earn $4 a day. And he's like, oh wow, you live on $4 a day? And they got all offended. They were like, no, we save half of it. Like serious mind shift, right? But like they're not buying sunscreen. And they're outside driving a rickshaw in Indonesia for 15 hours a day, and nobody has skin cancer and nobody is dying. So
that's amazing. I just had this thought, Meredith, which I'm sure you've already thought about, but revisiting the idea of a documentary, you have so much goodness now that actually would be an amazing idea to make a documentary of what's unfolded since you started this journey and how practitioners have shifted and the pioneers, you know, of the field like Carrie and whatnot. That would be amazing.
That would be fun. You're right.
Just think about it.
And we wouldn't feel so beholden to get into like the deep science. It would be more a story,
You could
the
have
story
little
of the
blips of science.
unfolding.
Carrie could do little blips of science, just a little.
Yeah, just little. It's a good idea, Heather. Maybe we should all do it together.
Yeah.
I think it sounds like a great idea. I'd definitely be into it. Yeah.
Yeah.
So,
Well, maybe the new a nonprofit can fund it. We could do a fundraiser for a documentary.
There you
yeah,
go.
well, tell everybody about that.
Ideas are flowing.
Yeah.
So we're changing the structure of the certification. It's currently run through an LLC, which is like a business, and we're in the process of applying to be a 501c3, which is a nonprofit status in the United States. And that will allow us, it just sort of is more in alignment with sort of what the vision of all of this was. It's like, okay, now that it's working, like what do you want to be? Where do you want to go? Like I had sort of conversations with this entity. And that's what it wanted, right? It was like, it just was sort of the way that it felt right. If like the end goal is to really lay the infrastructure for like a new field, then it can't really be owned by anyone. And I looked into LLCs and I talked to the lawyer and they're like, well, what it really means is that the public owns it. And I'm like, exactly, that's perfect. So there's that. But then also it allows us to fundraise so that we can finance research or documentaries or whatever is needed. And so we will, be putting the call out to all of you for ideas, and it could start with very simple ones. Like Sarah Pugh had some very simple ideas of doing labs on a control group and labs on people who got circadian optimized and then retesting them, right? Like very simple things that nobody's doing.
That should be the obvious starting place.
Yeah.
That's a great one. Simple. Yeah.
Labs, but also just client report, which I know is not
Mhm.
like worthy in science eyes, but what changed for them? Like what's the spiritual? I want that in there too somewhere. That matters as well.
Yes.
Yeah. I mean, I wish we could, what's your energy like? What's your sleep like? What's your mood like? All of those things trump a lab to me any day, but
Yes.
I know that's not everybody feels that way, but in my opinion.
No, I completely agree. Yeah. So
Yeah.
I think, we were trying to like get some data down, but absolutely. And the spiritual piece too, I was thinking about that as, I don't know, I think about things like that, I guess, but I do think that connecting to the light frequencies has a spiritual effect.
Absolutely.
Oh, it does. Oh,
That's definitely, I'm sure you've noticed that for yourselves and everyone you've talked to on your podcast.
Yes, 1,000,000%. Definitely. It's such a spiritual thing to me. My husband, I'm starting to get him into it. Like I'm starting to get him to come out at sunrise with me, which is like amazing. And I'm like, we were just at a beach. We were right at in, oh man, where we're Virginia. I can't remember the name of the beach, but anyway, not Virginia Beach. Oh, it's going to come to me. Chesapeake Bay. So anyway, I was watching the sunrise and sunset, and like I stared at like in awe. Like it's like this amazing, beautiful spiritual thing. Like I'm like, isn't this so beautiful? Like he's like, how is this so beautiful to you? Like he hasn't gotten there yet. I'm like, to get there. Like it's just like every day is different, and it is such a spiritual practice. Like for me, I'm like, it's like just awe inspiring every single time. He's like, hey, you seen one, you seen everyone. I'm like, no, not even so, but
I love it.
We'll get there.
I
Sun's
think
coming
the
up
more
21.
one's health has transformed, then that sinks in a different way. Your husband is pretty hardy, right? Like, I mean, he's very, very active in his work and super strong. And when you're I was so debilitated and so that's a spiritual dilemma, right? That's like an existential crisis. Like, what's the purpose of my life if I can literally not do and live my life the way that is meaningful to me? So for those of us, and you've been there too, Vanessa, it's like when you've been so nourished by the sun, it really does amplify that spiritual aspect of it, because now my life has meaning. now I can experience life in the rich way that I want to versus living like in this hollow shell where I'm just dragging myself around. I think there's something to be said about that part of it, right?
Mhm.
Yes.
Yeah.
And not even realizing that we're doing that, right? I think we've normalized feeling kind of crappy
Yeah,
all the
totally.
time,
I've
right?
had
Like
so
I
many
didn't,
clients
and
over the years
yeah,
who are tired but it's like it's no big deal. Oh, it's just the way it is, right?
yeah, no, I'm just tired. And it's
Yeah.
like, do you
It's
have a newborn? Because unless you have a newborn, like you don't need to feel like that.
no, the people very much normalize needing to eat all the time, needing to drink coffee all the time, never sleeping, go, 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 hustle culture, all of these things. These are so normalized. And like, it's just like, that's the way it has to be. And that's the only way it should be. Right. But that's not how it has to be at all. It can be so much better. So, yeah.
Yeah. And with small changes too. Like I've noticed lately, like some of my friends from like my normie life have started listening to my podcast, which I think is funny because I did not push it on them. They're like, no, we want to. I'm like, are you sure? And then I'll see them all like, yeah, it just makes so much sense. I totally get it. But gosh, I'm just so overwhelmed with the thought of like changing every light bulb in my house. And I'm like, you don't have to change every light bulb in your house, just
Mhm.
one or two. And right. But it just,
Yeah.
and as practitioners and coaches and teachers, right? Like we do remember that sometimes you present this big vision to people and they're like, oh my God, I don't know what to do with it. I'm not going to do anything. So, but the little things change, little changes can have such big effects, right? Like
Yeah. Oh, yeah. That's the quantum effect.
changing one light bulb or opening the window or
Yeah.
turning your phone off 2 hours earlier, whatever.
Yeah, all of that can be so, so huge. And that's why getting a coach to guide you on it is helpful
Yeah.
because of the fact that it can be overwhelming. Like, it depends on the personality of the person, like in different clients. So everybody's different. Like, I'm like very like gun ho. Like, I learned something like, oh, I can implement it right away. Like, I don't have a problem with that. Like, I learn it, I implement. I learn, I implement. Like, very easy for me, but not everybody's like that. Not everybody can do that. So they learn, like, so that's when you need like a
Yeah.
guide and a coach to help you through that process. So you're like, okay, this week, I just want you to get up and watch the sunrise. Or if that's too much, I want you to put the blue blockers on at night. That's your job. Like that's the one, just do one thing each week and then like slowly build upon that. And then over time, you're creating this lifestyle that really is just in alignment, So
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, and it doesn't feel hard. And I still feel like,
Yes.
well, what I don't do that much. And then like we'll go to travel and I'll have like the list of all the things I need to do to the hotel room. And I'm like, oh no, I guess I do a lot. like bring tape in case there's a crack in the window in the curtains and the street lights come through. Like
Just like all
bring,
hotel rooms.
yeah, bring lights for it. I'm like, oh yeah, I guess I do a lot of things.
But once it's in your home, like then it's
Yeah.
easy because it's already set
Yeah.
that, like we have an RV and we travel with the RV a lot. And now the RV is kind of set up the way I like it too. It just has two lamps in it, like, so there's so many ways you can make it work, and just, yeah. And then once it's done,
I want somebody to start a business. It's like low EMF, all UVA or whatever lights, and then summer lights in these camper vans because they're so toxic with the EMFs. All you're just encased in a little microwave, and then they have all the little LEDs in there. And I'm thinking, you guys don't get it. You need to market to this, to people who need to have a safe place to be when they're traveling. That would be amazing.
that would be so cool. That would be really cool. That's an idea for the future, maybe. Yeah, definitely. What else do we need to talk about? So, I mean, I also wanted to say, like, just as a life coach, because I know that's what you also do too. And there's also the coaching piece that you do in the Quantum Biology Collective, which is also amazing. And you do a fantastic job with that too, Meredith.
Thank
Um,
you.
but what do you think is like holding people back? I wanted to know, like, as a life coach, sometimes from healing or living their best life or just, living their passion, their purpose, those kinds of things. Like, what do you see?
Yeah, I mean, a lot of different things. I think what I notice is like it's like a light to medium to severe, depending on the person, form of denial, right? Where
Mhm.
it's like, no, everything's fine. It's not that bad. It's not that right. And because the path forward is not clear, people feel like it's not there. And there's a deep passivity to this is just the way things are. And I think a lot of people give up, or they become upset with the version of reality that they see, and they become very like activist oriented, which is fine, but an activist is by definition pushing back against something unwanted. And sometimes that is very necessary, right? Like I think a lot of us had activist mode on during COVID, right? Like it's a necessary, important mode, but it's not, for me, I don't think it's a good long-term life mode. I think that creating the reality you want to live in and finding people who will help you see the path you'd prefer to be walking is a much easier, more fun, more joyful way of living. And then you become a model for other people, right? As opposed to somebody whose job is to tell everyone how horrible the world is and what they need to do to fight it.
Well, that's not very inspiring. I think it just instills more fear and more anger, which in some cases, as you mentioned, is necessary, right? But not sustainable because it burns us out, right? It's too much energy expenditure. It doesn't actually manifest what you want, right? Because you're not focusing on what you want. You're focusing on what you don't want. So we got to focus on what we do want. And then that will help us to have more energy, right? Because we're working based on a longing. The longing, we want to privilege the longing of what we want. So, right?
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. And it's often just, like with the light, like a small shift can have an outside nonlinear effect. So, it's like maybe you don't need to renovate your entire life. Maybe you just need to shift your worldview a tiny bit, or be open to a certain possibility that you didn't think was there. And it's unique for everybody, but I think working with someone or being around people or reading books or listening to podcasts or doing anything where you're encouraged to find those possibilities, it's a very meaningful way to spend your time.
Yeah. Beautifully stated. Beautifully stated. I love that. Yeah. It's really, really important for us to be finding and living our passion and purpose and doing that. Cause I think that can hold us back from healing in itself, is when you're not, in alignment and living with what you really want to be doing. So I think that's really, really important.
Yeah. I did an interview with this chiropractor in California, Calvin Ng, and you guys should have him on. He has a really great way of talking about being in alignment, and he believes that being out of alignment depletes your mitochondria.
Oh, definitely.
And you're like, oh yeah, of course it does, but I hadn't actually heard someone like frame it the way he did.
Yep.
Yeah, that makes total sense.
Yeah.
Because I think it's a chronic stress state when you're out of alignment and you're trying to be okay with it. You're trying to change things outside of you to make them work. You're denying the truth that's inside of you. So there's always this like tension.
It's the same as
where is this out? Sorry.
It's the same as not speaking your truth, not saying what's on your heart. Like if you're not doing that, that's the same thing. It's like this, I don't know. I think of it as almost like black smoke inside of the body. Like it's just going to eat away at you. Like, you have to, I mean, I know Heather agrees, and I'm sure you will agree, like mindset, mental, emotional, this all affects our health hugely as well. So this is, of course, light is important. All of that, light, there's so many pieces to health, right? And light is one piece, and circadian biology is a huge, big piece, right? But mindset and your mental emotional status is also really huge. And there's so many pieces to it.
Yeah. And they all spiral together, right? Like if I hadn't been doing spiritual work and mindset work for however long it had been, I would have just been like crying over my spiralizer, right? Like, I guess this is it. but it was my mindset being like, there's always something more, right? Like there's
Exactly.
always an
Yeah.
answer I haven't found yet. There's always an insight that I haven't had yet. I just need to keep looking
I
until
had
I
a
find it.
Yes, I had a post like that, like similar, like there's always solutions. You can always find things. And somebody on my TikTok reel wrote, like, that's not true for everybody. I go, that's why it's not true for you, because that's the mindset that you have, is that I
Yeah.
can't. You need to have the mindset that I can, or I haven't found the
Yeah.
solution yet, but you will find it. It's there. It's just that you just haven't
Yeah.
found it.
Yeah,
So
because we do everything we know to do, right? And like this is so often where people are in their health, right? Like when they come to our corner of the world, right? Like they've done everything they know to do
yeah.
and they're at a dead end. And it's like the mindset piece, the spiritual opening piece is like, just because I can't see it, just because it looks like a dead end to me, doesn't mean it actually is.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's like there's a interesting, what's the word, irony there, because part of it is surrender.
Mhm.
Okay, I've arrived at this place where I feel like I don't know what to do, or I haven't figured it out, or all those kinds of things that come up for us in our minds. And can I still be open to what can be, what is, right? What's possible? And then again, like I always say, tap into that longing, you know what I mean? Because that will guide you. Let your body guide you. Notice what that yearning is. And that is so potent and powerful. And I think that's what goes out into the ether, to come back around to the quantum piece,
Yes.
like, right? That's the
Yes.
message you're broadcasting, is I am open to receive
Yes.
Yes.
whatever goodness.
I'm all out of answers. I have gone through all of my I've spun through all of my intellectual knowledge, all the things I know to do, all the experts I know to ask, all the la 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 la. I've got my checklist done. Okay. Help.
Mhm.
Yeah. And just see what you can receive. Yeah. And see what comes through.
Yeah. And it might, like, you'll just, sometimes I'm sure you've all had this experience, right? And you have a moment like that, and then you just have what feels like a random thought, like,
Mhm.
why don't you go on Instagram right now? Why don't you text this person? Like, why don't you walk over to your bookshelf and pull down that book, right? Like you just
Or
all of
open
a
the book to
sudden,
this page.
yeah.
Right
Like these
there.
little like tingly ideas start to percolate. It's like, oh,
Yeah.
okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I know. That's really cool. Yeah.
Um, so speaking of, right, the truth and manifesting and being open, like I want to know, Meredith, and this has been such a fun chat. Like I'm so excited we had you on. Where do you see your mission going? Like what is it you hope to manifest in the future or create with your endeavors in the quantum biology world?
Well, for me personally and for quantum biology, I think the roads will diverge because I truly think this is ready to grow and become so big.
Mhm.
And probably that will need to be shepherded by a person other than myself and by a team, many people other than myself. I mean, I don't even really feel like it's me. I feel like it's all of us. We're all contributing. Like even people who just subscribe to my email list, I'm like, listen, if you signed up for this email list, like you're on the road, baby. Like you are making a difference. So I think that from the perspective of the Institute of Applied Quantum Biology, probably sometime in the next year or two, I will probably hand that leadership over to someone else who has different qualifications and different background. I'm a starter upper, as you said, I'm a vision person, but sometimes I think to grow you need different skills and different types of leadership. So my vision would be for this to outgrow me
Mhm.
and become, the way that a nonprofit works is there's a board of trustees who make sure that, so I've pulled together a nice board of people of different types of backgrounds who also understand what we're doing. And they would sort of oversee it, and then the entity itself will grow in ways that I probably can't even fathom yet. But you're all so amazing. Like every time, like I read through the applications people fill out for the next cohort, I'm like, look at all these wonderful people. Like it's just so, I'm excited to see what you all do with it.
Oh.
Open-ended.
Yeah. No, that sounds amazing. And I do think like it's coming. Like I feel like more and more people are talking about it and it is growing, this field. So I do think that I don't know if it'll happen in my lifetime or our lifetime, but maybe it will, like that it'll be more mainstream. But I feel like it is becoming that, you know, so it's getting there.
Absolutely. No, I see it around more and more, and people aren't
Yeah.
as surprised when I wear my glasses into the store, or it's
Mhm.
there's a trickle down effect. There's definitely it's
Mhm.
rolling out slowly.
Yeah.
And so you know how that works. I mean, it takes time. There's a word for that. I can't remember what it is. It's some phrase that describes like when the momentum accumulates and then all of a sudden it's the norm.
Yeah. The tipping point.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes.
Mhm. Well, we're definitely building that momentum, I feel like. So
Yes.
yeah,
I
that
think so. Yeah. And every person, who listens to your podcast or listens to it, engages in this in any way is contributing to that momentum. Right. Like I think that's the other thing too. People are like, oh, there's like some leaders in this field and it's those 4 people and the rest of us are just whatever. It's like, no, every single person matters. Like you
yes.
follow, if you're on Instagram and you follow all the quantum people and you order some blue blockers, like you're in.
That's it. And you know what too? Like it also is like what you created also creates this community, right? There's the connection in the community for all these people who are like living this lifestyle. Because it can I think when I first got into it, I definitely was like, oh, this is a little isolating. So you find that balance, right? Because you're kind of
Mhm.
like, there's a level of like fear at first, which is not where you want to go, right? But that does happen sometimes, I think. So that's like, okay, then you learn how to balance it and how to make things work better. But it creates that whole community and connection and support and like helps people who are on, say, a chronic illness journey who may feel isolated. Now they're like, and that was true for me. Like, oh, I have other people who do the same, who see the sunrise too, and other people who are blue blockers too. Okay, now I don't feel as like odd, you know? So
Yeah.
there's also that piece of it, which is also a beautiful piece that you brought in, you know?
Thank you. Yes, and a very important one too, because like you're asking before, like in coaching, when you see people having a hard time, like part of it is like you don't want to be the weirdo.
Yeah.
So just having one other person, like in a recovery community, like it's like you need to be around other people who are on that path, and it's not like it needs to take over your life. Like I have all my friends, and like none of them do this stuff, but they're like, okay, Meredith, like. But then once the shit hits the fan, they're like, "What were you saying about the blue bar?" Right? Like,
Where can
but
I
yeah,
get
I
bathrooms?
don't. It's not. Yeah, it's a good point. Like you need people on the journey with you, but you can also just keep living your life with your
Mhm.
non-quantum friends. It's all
Yeah.
good. It's all
Yeah.
good.
Yeah. What are the lifestyle practices and principles that are like most important to you, like that you do on a daily regular just to keep your health in the best shape it can be?
So it's interesting because I've like never been like like someone who's really into all that. Like I do what I need to do, but I'm not like, oh, I have this and I have that. So it has been good for me as well because I've had to cultivate some discipline around it because I'm like, okay, this really matters. I'm not just like la la la, whatever. Uh, so from a light perspective, we have we have red light bulbs in lamps and that's for after sunset. If I watch TV, which I do, like we like to watch family movies, or my husband and I, we just watched Dark Matter. You guys seen that?
No, is
Okay.
it the quantum thing?
It's no, it's a TV show on, I think it's on Apple. It's like a quantum physics thriller about like
Wow.
this
Check it
guy
out.
who invents a superposition box and he goes in and like comes out in all different realities possible in his life. Anyway,
That sounds
it's
fun.
it's really fun. It's also really emotionally
Oh.
literate. Like the
Mhm.
characters are real and their emotional journey is real. And I'm like, whoever wrote this is married for real. So it's really good. So anyway, I say that because we watch those wearing blue blockers, but also like I watch TV. It's fun. I like it. It's
Mhm.
it's I don't have like some kind of like monk lifestyle where I'm like la la la. And I go outside in the morning every single day as soon as I wake up. That is like my non-negotiable. And I work at home, so I go outside periodically all day long. I have the thing on my computer so it doesn't, have iris, so it doesn't give off. I lower the blue light during the day and make it orange at night. And try to be barefoot outside. It's a little trickier in the winter. I started doing an infrared sauna during the winters, which was really changed my experience of high latitude living. That was really helpful. And like I eat real food and not processed food.
Yeah.
And
Very simple.
I go to Pilates and I walk my dog, and that's kind of it.
And it's very simple, right? Nothing is
Yeah.
really, nothing you said there sounds like really that hard to implement or really like challenging. It's just really all simple things that really anybody can do. So it's good.
Yep.
Perfect. Yeah. And it has you thriving. So that's what's important.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. And it's always up and down sometimes. And like I have periods of fatigue and I have to get a little more, I have to go to bed earlier and get a little more stringent on things. I don't always see the sunrise in the summer because I got to say like 5:15 is really early.
Yeah.
But I go out, I'm out sort of around 6 probably.
Getting a little later now. So
yeah,
it's going the other way. I know, like right around the time of like July is a little bit rough, but
yes.
Sometimes it's just like I'll just pop the window open. I'm in my bedroom right now, actually, because the kids just pop the window open and stay in bed a little bit. Like it's still coming.
That's true. I have the window open.
Like there you go, and you're good to go, because that is early. Yeah. But those symptoms like creeping back up, it's like just that kind of like reminder of like, oh, okay, remember I need to do this. It's like the way your body sends that message, that signal, like, oh yeah, gotta work on this.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
And I work with a physician who's, a quantum physician, and, I do labs and things periodically, or what, check different things. But again, like they'll send me the kit and I won't do it for 3 months. They're like, you done your labs yet? I'm like, yeah. I'll get on it.
I hear you.
So let's talk about, as we wind up here, Meredith, if we've inspired anyone to maybe learn more or actually change their focus to be a quantum practitioner, where can they find you?
So we are on Instagram at Quantum Biology Collective, and the website for the certification is IAQB, that's Institute of Applied Quantum Biology, so IAQB.foundation. And there's just some basic information there about what is quantum biology, what are we even talking about, as well as information on the certification and an application form if people are interested. And then if you want to find a practitioner, I would go to quantumbiologycollective.com. That's where our practitioner directory is. And so everyone in there is like deep into all of this stuff. So as I said earlier, like I really do think it's worth having at least one person working with somebody who understands this. Just even for a short period of time, like it's really, really makes a huge difference.
Yeah, agreed. For sure. And if you're interested, I love the program. I thought it was so great. I learned so much. So it was just it's really beautiful the way it's laid out, and there's the trainers, the coaches, whoever you want to, everybody who's in there teaching is just amazing. And I still go back and listen to the Q&As now, like that are not in cohort, and I love that I can do that. I'm like, oh man, like a couple of them that Carrie did in the last, like, I don't know, it wasn't this cohort, I think the one before, they were just so amazing. I was like, it's just amazing. So like you can always keep growing and learning. So I love that.
Oh, I love that you're going back in there. Yeah, and we found this new platform where you could literally like put in a keyword and then boom, you have it takes you right to the point where that topic was discussed or answered in the Q&A. So it's almost like having a live Q&A at your fingertips, like once you're in there, and you have access to that forever. So I'm glad you're using it.
Yeah, no, I definitely use it. I've actually said, I'm like, you got to go back and listen to this one about it. Carrie did, because it was so good. Good. Because people like that. I love those Q&As because they're not, you don't know where they're going to go. Like they could go any direction, and whatever like you're meant to hear is what you're meant to hear, right? And I love that piece of it. And I don't know, just always learn something. So it's great.
Yeah, they're really fun.
So Meredith, thank you so much for your time today. Yeah.
Thanks, Heather. Thanks, Vanessa. I'm so happy to be on here. And as I said earlier, I'm so happy you were both doing this
Yeah.
and
Well,
happy
we're
to know you.
yeah, happy that you're
likewise.
doing
The
what you're
pleasure's
doing
ours.
too. Yeah, 100%. And thank you so much for coming on. It's been a delight chatting with you.
Thanks.